on this very important matter.
Stephen Kinnock.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'd like to congratulate the honourable members for Bolton South East and Oldham East and Saddleworth, and also thank the Backbench Business Committee for the opportunity to have this important debate today. I'd also like to thank all members across all benches who've made such passionate and eloquent contributions. I'd also very much like to thank and welcome the Minister to her place and to congratulate her on her appointment. Mr Deputy Speaker, 72 years this conflict in Jammu and Kashmir has been going on. It's the world's longest unresolved conflict. It dates back to 1947 and is defined by a long and tragic history of political and military conflict. In that year, the British state was, as the departing colonial power, a signatory to the Instrument of Accession, which gave Kashmir a high degree of autonomy. I will give way.
I thank my friend for giving way on that really important point. Many of my constituents in Luton South say that the UK has a vital role to play in this international issue, and it shouldn't just be left as a bilateral issue. And would you agree with me on that point?
I think my honourable friend, and agree absolutely. It's not just about a historical responsibility, it's also about the fact that we have so many ties that bind us now in 2021. So there is actually an opportunity to work with our friends and partners in India and Pakistan and with the Kashmiri people to find a peaceful solution. At the same time, India was granted control over Kashmir's foreign affairs, defence and communications. Since then, we've seen countless UN resolutions put forward, plus many other diplomatic interventions, each attempting to resolve the Kashmir conflict. Perhaps the most significant was the Simla Agreement, which was concluded following the Indo-Pakistan War of 1971. The Labour Party strongly supports the conclusions of the Simla Agreement, in particular its conclusion that issues involving India, Pakistan and Kashmir should be negotiated between the parties and that no state should deploy force or act unilaterally. I'm very sorry for my honourable friend, but I'm actually going to be running out of time. And Mr Deputy Speaker, if he could make his intervention extremely short, please.
I thank my honourable friend. It's a very important point. But does my honourable friend agree the Simla Agreement, as important as it is, does not take precedent over United Nations resolutions?
I think it's important to see Shimla and the UN resolutions as a framework for peace. What's very important in all of these resolutions is that the agreements and peace negotiations have to be between all of the parties. And that's the key point about not taking unilateral action, which I'll come on to. The Labour Party does not interfere with the internal affairs of other nations, but we do seek to uphold what we see as universal values, namely the respect for the rule of law, support for democracy and the promotion of universal rights and freedoms. Where we see these principles being violated, we will comment, we will urge other governments to take action and change course. 50 years after Shimla, we recognise the situation on the ground is deeply troubling. As many as 95,000 people have been killed in the last 30 years alone, by some accounts, and Kashmir is recognised as the most heavily militarised place in the world. It's deeply distressing that Kashmir has become a political football in a sordid game of great power competition between India, China and Pakistan. And what a dangerous game this is, Mr Deputy Speaker, given that each of these nations hold nuclear capabilities. I apologise to the honourable gentleman. I'm just going to have to push on. I'm very, very sorry about that. On the 5th of August 2019, the Indian government's Jammu and Kashmir Reorganisation Bill universally revoked Article 370 and replaced the autonomous state of Jammu and Kashmir with two new union territories governed directly by New Delhi, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. What followed was an Indian Army-imposed lockdown in Jammu and Kashmir lasting until February 2021, in tandem with a communications blackout. The lockdown and the internet ban had far-reaching impacts on every aspect of life for the Kashmiri people. Education, health services and media freedom were all undermined. The Indian government maintained that its decision to unilaterally revoke Article 370 was an internal matter, claiming that such actions don't interfere with the boundaries of the territory or the line of control, citing security concerns based on attacks by what New Delhi believes to be Pakistan-backed militant groups. And indeed, we all recall with great sadness the tragic suicide bomb attack on the 14th of February 2019, which targeted Indian soldiers in Kashmir. But the Labour Party recognises that those who are opposed to the revocation of Article 370 and the subsequent lockdown are understandably angered by what they see as a unilateral act of aggression on the part of the Indian government. And there can be no doubt that this unilateral action was counterproductive in terms of trying to achieve a peaceful and just long-term settlement. Furthermore, in line with Labour's commitment to universal rights and the rule of law, we would urge the Indian government to consider carefully the impact on the individual rights and freedoms of innocent Kashmiri citizens when taking such significant action. I'd also like to make clear that the Labour Party will always speak up vociferously in defence of the human rights of the people of Kashmir. On this note, we recognise the hardship faced by those living also in Pakistan-administered Azad Kashmir, where the Azad Jammu and Kashmir Elections Act 2020 clearly contravened the universal freedoms of expression, association and peaceful assembly. In a letter to the Muslim Council of Britain on the 8th of May, my right honourable friend, the Leader of the Opposition, made clear that all sides must play their part in ending this conflict. Our position on Kashmir has not changed, he wrote. We support and recognise previous UN resolutions on the rights of Kashmiri people, but maintain that if we are to find a lasting settlement, that can only be achieved by India and Pakistan working together with the people of Kashmir. It is with this in mind that I have the following questions to the Minister. First, since taking up her new role, has she yet sought to impress on her Indian and Pakistani counterparts the need for a plan to demilitarise the larger Kashmiri region? And on this note, has she met yet with the High Commissioner for India, and did she make clear the need for the Indian government to uphold human rights in Jammu and Kashmir? Second, what meetings has she had with human rights organisations about the situation in Jammu and Kashmir? Does she give support to the work of the International People's Tribunal on Human Rights and Justice in Kashmir, which seeks to address the human rights situation? Third, does the government have any plans to send a delegation to Jammu and Kashmir to assess the human rights situation and to report back to Parliament? Her predecessor did actually say the government was looking to do this once the pandemic allowed. And finally, will the UK government commit to doing all it can to support and work with representatives from India, Pakistan and Jammu and Kashmir, including all 5 regions, to deliver justice, peace and resolution to that terrible conflict? I welcome her again to her place and I look forward to hearing her answers. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Minister.